Good morning, sir. Good morning.
How
sir.
are you?
I'm good, sir.
Wonderful. Such a pleasure to interact with you. Are we ready?
Yes, sir. Same here.
Wonderful. So, Mr. Nikhil, that you had an outstanding academic career and you're from IIT, done electrical engineering,
sir.
and from
Yes, sir.
Faridkot.
Sorry, sir. Could you please repeat?
You're from Faridkot.
Yes, sir.
Faridkot is known for the right kind of reasons and also communal harmony. Is there a specific reason why the communal harmony prevailed even during and after the independence and there were no communal disturbances?
So Faridkot is named after Sheikh Baba Farid, who was a Sufi saint, and his teachings. There's still a mazar there where every Thursday people go and worship. So that culture, I believe, has seeped into the land and the people of Faridkot, which has helped with communal harmony.
Good to know that, and I hope that sentiment continues for all times to come. But we also have disturbing news, and the disturbing news one is the drone attacks from across the border. You are an IIT engineer. I would like to understand from you, can we have a strategy to counter drone attacks and address the attack from rogue drones?
So presently, most drones that are being observed from across the border, they are line of sight drones. So if we plant, say, tall trees, we can obstruct the line of sight. That would be one. The second would be jamming the electronic communication. If we install electronic jammers, the handlers of drones would not be able to access the drones and the footage, or would not be able to guide the drones. So these two strategies, I believe, would help us initially.
To understand from you that any jammer has a range, and if along the Punjab border, Rajasthan border, how many jammers would we require to jam the electronic communication of the drone flying area? Just a rough guess. Or is there a technology? Is there a technology to obstruct and prevent the drones jamming communication? Do we have a technology in position?
So I'm sorry, I'm not aware about that.
Even I'm not aware, but anyway, that needs to be seen. And the next thing would be that probably the other side of the coin, the Government of India MHA's directions to enhance the zone of the Border Security Force that was opposed by the earlier Punjab government and several other states too, including West Bengal. What is your view? First of all, tell me, what did the measure envisage? The enhancement of the range of the Border Security Force.
So the government enhanced the range of the BSF jurisdiction from 15 kilometers to 50 kilometers in Punjab. It was mainly done to harmonize the range across multiple states: Rajasthan, Gujarat, Punjab, West Bengal, Assam. In my view, it was the right decision to take. One, because of operational concerns. For example, the BSF, while crossing the Punjab and Rajasthan border, would have to deal with different areas of jurisdiction. Number two, this does not impinge upon the state police jurisdiction, because the BSF does not have the power to prosecute. Even if the BSF apprehends someone, they have to hand over the person to the state police. And that coordination, if both the forces work in coordination, that would be in the best interest of national security.
Great. And the state's note of dissent and the state's concerns, how would you address them? Do you think that they have merit in them, or do you think they are objections for the sake of objections?
So I believe in the context of federal issues, it's a sensitivity among states about losing jurisdiction to national agencies. To address those, there's a need for greater dialogue amongst these different agencies. In Punjab, for example, we saw a breakdown of communication between state and central level agencies, especially during the Prime Minister's visit. So we need to work upon improving those communication channels so that such sensitivities can be minimized.
From Punjab, I take you to West Bengal. My last question. You are the district magistrate or the senior superintendent police Birbhum area where this tragedy occurred yesterday. As a district magistrate or as the senior superintendent of police, a day before, on the day and the next day, yesterday, today and tomorrow, what line of action would you have taken to ensure that the incident could have been prevented, averted? And if it did happen, what follow-up would you do? 5 bullet points.
So I would have to apologize. I did not follow the last 2 days' news. I unfortunately could not read upon that.
I take you back to Punjab then. 3 election days, multiple cases of desecration. Multiple cases of desecration. You are the district magistrate in a sensitive district. What precautions would you take a day before, on that day and the subsequent day, to prevent this kind of an incident happening?
So specifically, the incidents that happened in the run-up to the election, they happened in the Gurudwaras. And the Granthis in the Gurudwaras are the most important personnel. So establishing a direct line of communication with the Granthis and the Gurudwaras of my area would be the most important, so that any activity that is suspect, I can be informed of immediately. That would be 1 day prior. If on the day any such incident happens and I'm informed of the incident, I would directly inform the SHO to rush to the place, inform the Granthi that support is coming, to place the culprit in a separate, secure room, not engage with, not inform of this incident to the wider public in the nearby area, which could lead to ruffling of sentiments. And the day after, I would lodge an FIR, I would direct the police to lodge the FIR and let the law take its own course.
That's a very cogent answer, but as an engineer from an IIT, would you not suggest the use of appropriate technology to prevent and get after the culprits? Any appropriate technology that you have in mind?
So CCTVs could be installed in the premises, especially where the Shri Guru Granth Sahib is kept, to keep an eye out for these culprits. And I'm not sure of what are the religious sensitivities regarding that. That is why I did not recommend that as my first step.
Any other technology? Well, that will be all from my side.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm not able to think of.
Mahajan, I'm tempted to continue with this line of questioning which the Honorable Chairman has started. Suppose I ask you that India is a secular country, and when we talk in terms of desecration of a place of worship or a holy book, we enter into a very explosive territory, because it almost amounts, if we are playing along, establishing a dialogue with the Granthis and Gurdwaras, we are making a concession which amounts to an appeasement, because then the Granthi decides whether an act of desecration has taken place or not taken place. Now, if you have a secular state, it almost amounts to a slide towards a precipice of laws of blasphemy. Now, there could be desecration of a holy book of the Muslims. There obviously risk of desecration of the holy book of the Sikhs, but there is no prescribed holy book for the Hindus. So desecration of a place of worship may take a different form. And then what happens is, there might be people, vigilantes, who might take law in their own hand, whether they are Sikhs, whether they are Muslim extremists, or whether they are Hindu revivalists, and you might have a situation where the law and order problem is not met with, as the Honorable Chairman said, what the Senior Superintendent of Police does that there or not. Would you like to think about this and respond to the challenge of having a secular state? I am not arguing that the secularism in India can never be the secularism of the French post-Napoleonic code variety. I am not asking a Western secularism to be imposed in India. But if there has been a tradition of pluralistic religious beliefs and peaceful coexistence between these faiths and clashes at times, it still is not just a law and order problem. It is more of a societal problem. You have intolerance, and you are... Honorable Chairman's question was directly related to election time. So whenever there is election time, we have stage-managed desecration of places of worship or holy books. So how would you respond to that?
So first, taking the law into their own hands, that is completely out of the question. It's the state's responsibility.
I'm not interested at the moment. I'm at the moment interested in the more basic analysis of the causes which lead to the flare up these. Everybody knows कि election आ रहा है, दंगे होंगे. Election आ रहा है, इस तरह का फसाद होगा. and especially in Gurudwaras and desecration of Guru Granth Sahib, etc., nobody should have, I mean, ultimately the Shiromani Akali Dal was the creation of the British colonial rule who handed over the administration of the Gurudwara to that. Punjab politics and the whole history of Khalistan goes into a certain trajectory. So I would like to ask you, I don't want to make this a question of desecration of only the objects of worship or sacred objects in Sikh faith. Let's have it all over the place. But isn't there a remedy or a preventive measure which should be put in place before?
So India being a secular state and criminalizing, already the Indian Penal Code criminalizes hurting religious sentiments. And desecration of a holy book is one of the most extreme forms of that. So I do not see a contradiction between India being a holy state and acting against incidents of desecration. That being said, the Granthi's word cannot be taken for it. For example, in one of the incidents, a man was killed by the local villagers, and the Granthi claimed that he had desecrated the holy book. But it was later found that he was a mentally ill man who had no intention of doing so. He was just there to have some food. And that case, in fact, an FIR was lodged against the Granthi himself. So Indian state has responded, I think, suitably in this regard, maintaining its secular credentials and also following the IPC regarding hurting the religious sentiments.
All right. I have other question I have in mind for you is about your optionals. You have offered mathematics as the optional paper for the civil service, not the electrical engineering. Any particular reason for that?
So I was more comfortable with mathematics, and mathematics also has a higher success rate.
My second question is directed towards the comfort level of mathematics. Have you heard of a book and a film called A Beautiful Mind?
Yes, sir.
What does it deal with? What mathematician it deals with?
So, Mr. John.
What was his contribution to mathematics? And what were his problems in personal life?
Sorry, sir, I could not understand the last
What were his
sentence.
problems in personal life? And what was his contribution to mathematics? Which got him...
Sir, it was Mr. John Nash. He made significant contributions to game theory. And he had mental illness issues, specifically schizophrenia, if I recall correctly, which led to problems in his personal life.
Have you come across a book which talks of the theory of probability in game of poker, business, etc.? Well, Newman, for instance. Would you talk a little about that? The origins of probability theory and its applications in various fields?
So I recall very faintly reading in our NCRT, in our school NCRT, that probability...
And you have done so well, you have opted for mathematics. You are wanting me to go back to NCRT, I would not like it. Does NCRT textbook mention Mr. Newman, von Neumann by name anywhere? Not to the best of my recollection. I'm heading towards senile dementia. Forget it. Let's get back to somebody else. Can you tell me something about Shannon and his contribution as a mathematics to communications theory?
Sir, could you please repeat the scientist's name?
No, I'll give you which you... Have you heard of a person called Alan Turing?
Yes, sir.
What is the Turing test?
So the Turing test relates to understanding if a machine is intelligent or not. So the artificial intelligence, the concept of artificial intelligence sort of emerges from that.
What does the Turing test prove? Was supposed to prove? Somebody is given a Turing test or some... So what is it supposed to test?
I'm sorry, sir, I'm not able to recall right now.
Don't worry about that. I think we'll leave it at that. But can you tell me the collaborator who was responsible for getting international recognition to Srinivas Ramanujam? The Cambridge mathematician?
The collector?
The numbers theory expert in mathematics in Cambridge University.
Right, sir. Mr. G. Hardy at Cambridge.
That's all I have to ask.
Thank you, sir.
So I want to ask you a very simple question, I think, but maybe it's not so simple. You have gone into engineering, and we have India really on the move with so much happening, so much development. We have great demand and need for people who in the science field, especially in electrical, because new ways of electrification, removing the wires, etc., are coming up. And suddenly a bright person like you goes into civil services. What were your reasons for going into civil services? And what do you think specifically can be your contribution as engineer, electrical engineer in this field?
Ma'am, initially I entered engineering because I was good at mathematics. And that is when I started to think about what do I want to choose as a career. Now, in college, I had exposure to certain public policy courses in the humanities department, specifically focused on science and technology policy. That sparked my interest, along with my engineering education, that I wanted to deal with a broader picture, bigger picture, and how could we catalyze as you rightly said, the revolution that is happening in India in the field of science and technology. And that is the reason that I chose to appear for this examination, to be a part of the policymaking process. And through that, hopefully catalyze the revolution in innovation, startups, entrepreneurship. And as far as my contribution in civil services is concerned, the government is increasingly promoting, for example, the National Semiconductor Mission, the policy on electric vehicles. We need to understand what these technologies are. We need to procure them for the government. Initially, the government has to play a supportive role in catalyzing the manufacturing of these technologies. And in that, I believe my particular skill set can be an asset to the government in negotiating the emerging technological space.
Okay, so can you just tell me one small little thing in terms of the cultural contribution of Punjab? You are basically from Punjab, as I understand, and there's a lot of linkages between Punjab and Delhi. As we see the story, when I go through the gazetteers while I was doing my research on Indraprasth, I see Indraprasth at one time was with Haryana, then it went to Punjab, and then it was Punjab and Haryana, etc. But in terms of culture, what are the similarities and what is more significantly outstanding contribution of Punjab for as a in terms of any aspect of culture which appeals to you?
So, ma'am, having lived in Delhi as well for my graduation, I believe Delhi owes a significant part of its culture to Punjab. Delhi is known for the cuisine that is really, a lot of it is Punjabi in origin. For example, butter chicken is something that the Punjabi import.
The Pindi, the Khan market area is Punjab, but what about Purani Delhi? That's not Punjab. That's completely North Indian. The the Braj and the UP types. So yeah.
Right. So my exposure was more of South Delhi campus where I stayed. So yes, that was the context in which I mentioned that.
Of other cultural activities, what do you think? How do you think Punjab has been a very prominent state? Some of the things that Punjab has sort of contributed.
Punjabi language has enriched the Hindi, the Hindavi language that emerges in Delhi. That's a combination of Punjabi and Hindustani language that emerges. That's a combination of the languages in the surrounding region.
Using words much too flexibly like Alice in Wonderland. I mean what I mean. Hindustani is the same, Hindavi is the same. Punjabi has influenced Hindustani. Where does Hindavi started? What was its relation with Dakhni? What is Mohalla Bazaar, Urdu? I think can you name one instance of a major Punjabi writer or a Punjabi language idiom being used in Hindi, Hindustani? Hindavi nobody is using at the moment. And Urdu has less of Punjabi than it has of Dakhni, Hindi, Arabic, Persian.
See,
it would be a very tricky ground to tread on.
So actually I gave you a very wide perspective. Culture could be people who write, people who sing, people who are into dance forms, people who are into multi-level activities, crafts and cuisine. So you could have chosen could you name some few prominent people who have, let's say, contributed to the film industry? That's also a part of our cultural, ethos that builds India together. And in terms of dance forms, the lively form of Bhangra stands out. It's not like any other dance form,
Yes, ma'am.
And the Lori part of it, when we celebrate Lori, which is in sync with the other New Year events, many places that we have. So when I gave you a very wide perspective, so you were actually confused. I should have been specific. So now just tell me, name a few personalities, name a few, performing arts in which you feel Punjab stands out and has made a name for itself, and it's been like internationally very well known.
You're absolutely right, ma'am. Punjabi music and dance are probably the most significant cultural exports from Punjab. I myself am a trained Bhangra dancer. I started and led the Bhangra team at IIT Delhi. So that should have been my first response. I apologize for the answer that I gave. Apart from that, the film industry, especially after partition, there was a significant migration of Punjabi refugees to the Bombay area. And you had significant production houses like Mr. Raj Kapoor, Dharma Productions, YRF, Yashaj Films, that led to. So it is said that the influence of Punjabi music is because of these production houses dominating the early stages of Bollywood history. So these are the probably the most significant cultural contributions of Punjab.
Okay, I pass it.
Okay. Nikhil, apart from being the lead for the Bhangra, you're also a blues guitarist, I see from your hobbies. So how and when did blues music originate?
So the blues music originates from the African American slaves in the late 19th century. It gets formalized. It first starts getting recorded in early 20th century. Mr. Robert Johnson probably is the first known blues guitarist to be recorded.
What was the experiences of slavery that led musicians from the deep south to take to blues music?
So in my understanding, it was the monotony and the harsh nature of the job. So if you listen to blues music, it is very simple lyrically. There's a certain structure that is followed. So a lot of people who do not understand blues music, they would say that all songs are same because the structure of music is the same. It's a 12-bar blues pattern. But the unique thing about that I also relate, in fact, I related with my Punjabi background, is a call and response structure to the lyrics, which is also found in Punjabi Boliyan, where someone would say something and repeat that line, and the other person working in the same field would respond to that, and you would develop a small story or a small narrative around that, which would somehow serve to soften the monotony and the harshness of the labor that you're doing in the field.
You're also a quizzer. So tell me,
yes,
this new format quizzing that has come out with the success of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, what has that done to the traditional form of quizzing? Do you think it's a bastardized form now of quizzing? Has it completely changed the basic structure by bringing money into the equation?
So first, I would want to acknowledge the excellent book that you wrote in the same format. I believe the structure has served two purposes. One is a positive. It has brought significant amount of recognition to quizzing. Bringing money into it does attract attention. It does attract interest and participation. And as a quizzer, I would want my quizzes to be better attended. But the flip side of the coin is that it has led to more emphasis on trivia quizzing. While the quizzing that we enjoyed and I continue to enjoy is more of working out the answer. So where a number of clues are given, and then again, like in your book, the way the protagonist works out the answers from the knowledge that he has. But the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire format does not allow for that because there's only a single sentence. But for example, the pub quizzes, they have an entire paragraph in which there are many clues which are there, and there are many ways to come at the answer. And that is where, for me personally, the joy of quizzing lies.
Okay, last question from my side. What is the single biggest challenge that the world faces? The single biggest challenge, just one.
Climate change.
Why?
It's an existential threat. So the IPCC reports have clearly said the extreme climatic events that we face if we fail to restrict temperature rise up to 2 degrees Celsius, preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius. The economic, social, environmental, security challenges, migration, already we have seen from the Pacific. I believe there's a Carteret Island in the Pacific whose residents have become the world's first climate refugees. And this is only going to increase. The dislocation that climate change is going to cause in the next 50 years is going to require unprecedented levels of global collaboration if you want to tackle it successfully.
Mr. Nikhil, first I'll have the good news for you. The honorable members of the board feel that you are an outstanding candidate and you will make it. And come flying colors. Confident, your demeanor, your poise, self-confidence and the Mona Lisa smile. That is your USP.
Thank you, sir.
But the one thing that you don't say, somebody like you never says, I did not read the newspaper for 2 days. No.
Yes, sir.
I'm not prepared to accept somebody like you, a high achiever, said, I have not read the newspaper for the last 2 days. And my police sense says it is an unconvincing answer. What are the reasons? What were you up to if you did not read the newspaper? What were you up to? This is going to be the roadmap for your future. Okay, nothing else? Honorable members may like to.
I'm absolutely delighted, in 100% agreement with the Honorable Chairman. I think you are an excellent candidate, should figure high up on the rank. I also have the same problem. No excuses for, whatever you are doing. Even if you are commuting, and you can even get the news, you don't have to read a newspaper these days. You have a digital edition on your phone. And what happened in West Bengal, in Birbhum, is earth-shaking in terms of Indian tectonics of Indian politics. So
I only caught the headline, and it's a blunder on my part, so I sincerely apologize for not.
Catching the headline should, for a person preparing for IAS, motivate him to immediately find the details, which again can be done digitally.
Yes, sir.
So I continue with that only, that you should actually be very prepared that maybe your interview will start with today's headlines. What was the most important headlines? And it could be related to your subject. It could also be related to anything which is socially or politically influencing the movement of India forward. So I think reading the newspaper, not reading the newspaper is a very, very blunder, big blunder.
Self-goal, to say the least.
Yeah, and in terms of culture, I would really like you to be more focused, and since, as you said, you know about Bhangra, so you can define, when somebody asks you generic questions, you try and define it that in terms of this, I would like to focus on this aspect, unless you have something specific to know about different aspects of culture, because culture is the soul of any place.
Yes, ma'am, it was so wide, I just got puzzled in that. I should prepare better for that.
Culture should unite you. Ved Vyas was the first unifier of cultural India. What we call our country is a cultural nation.
Nikhil, I would echo what my colleagues have said. I think the poise and the equanimity that you have shown is exemplary. I think this is exactly the kind of traits that the board is looking for in a civil service aspirant. I think your knowledge database is also very, very good. You were quizzed on everything from electrical engineering to drones to blues music, and you came up with the goods. So all I would say is just be abreast of whatever is happening in the world, because the interview board, the actual interview board, may ask very different questions from what we are asking. But the important thing is that the poise that you have shown, and I think the easy manner in which you have responded, the winning smile, as the chairman mentioned, I think all these are plus points in your favor, and by all accounts, you should sail through. The interview.
Thank you so much, sir. That means a lot, sir.
Any questions from your side, young man?
Yes, sir. I'm submitting my DAF today. If in the hobby section, sir, in that 4 points, is that okay? Would we want to make any changes in?
No, I think they are fairly well balanced. You have mentioned your Bhangra, you have mentioned your extracurricular activities. I think you don't need to worry on that at all. I would only say that what ma'am asked you, that is the only question which left me slightly wanting for a more. You started with the Punjabi culture in Delhi and started with butter chicken. Now, butter chicken in Ludhiana might be Pankaj Mishra's travelogue. But the point is that the culture of Punjab in Delhi is not butter chicken. And don't get mixed up with culture of Punjab. At one time, Honorable Chairman started you with Faridkot, Baba Sheikh Farid. And then you are coming to butter chicken, which is a letdown. And because the culture of Punjab is more than forced refugee impact on the cuisine. It's a bastardization of a cuisine. Nobody in Punjab used to eat butter chicken at all. वो आलू वड़िया होता, भट्टी का
सरसों दी साग होता,
सरी मच्छी होती, सरसों दा साग होता,
मिस्सी रोटी.
Also, when you talk of music of Punjab, I know your love for Bhangra,
but don't limit. Yes.
There is Do Pattar Nara De, Khil Gaya, Ijbir Ka, Din Aaye Baharan De. And when I asked you the leading question about the impact on Hindi, there is a Punjabi winner of Jnanpith and Sahitya Academy Fellow, Krishna Somati, Mitro Marjani, Zinda Rukh, Danish.
Then Amrita Pritam, Khushwant Singh.
Amrita Pritam, yeah.
Exactly. You could have come to those people who have been people of Punjabi
Amrita Shergill.
Even Sardar Mahib Singh of Punjabi Academy. So you...
Sahir Ludhianvi.
Sahir Ludhianvi. You talked of you talked of, and she's mentioning Amrita Shergill. So the totality of Punjab, even Sarabjit Singh, even Paramjit Singh,
Yes.
even Gurdiyal Singh Mitti Di Madi. I mean, you know, you can't possibly have just butter chicken in Punjabi culture. It's sort of, you know.
Yes, sir. I understand.
You are very, very good. You
So
are
don't
very,
mix
very
up
good.
culture with cuisine, and also when you're talking about basics, go back to basics. Don't talk about the modern food unless you're asked about it.
Right.
बड़े गुलाम अली खान साहब का पटियाला घर है ना,
हाँ,
सिंगिंग
exactly.
राग पहाड़ी आज पिया किया है, क्या बात आप कर रहे हैं? Why should you forget great people in different fields? Good luck to you. Very good.
Very good.
All the
Very-
best, Nikhil.
all the
Thank you.
best.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.